NFL players apparently hate being on shows, but why? Quarterback blew up this offseason and made so many fans run over to Netflix to get a better view of the hardest job in sports and what that's like. It had a lot of success, but now, for some reason, a lot of quarterbacks have denied to actually be on it. They just don't seem to want it. And this offseason, every team that was eligible to go on Hard Knocks didn't want to either. These are shows that get fans excited or even make them want to go root for a specific team or player. But still, there's a reason why players don't want to be on them. And honestly, it's hard to blame them. In July of this year, Netflix released a show called Quarterback. Now, if you haven't watched the show yet, I highly recommend it. Jackson and I sat down and binged it in just a couple days, and it was really good. It followed 3 quarterbacks through last season, and obviously we all know what ended up happening, but it gives you an inside look at the lives of Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. It shows some of the ins and outs of the quarterback position and what those guys had to go through day in and out and what their personal lives are like. It was really cool because normally we don't get to see that side of things. Netflix did also show 3 different quarterbacks at very different levels, and that's what I think made the show so interesting. You have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, who's the best quarterback in the league at this point and is a big name. The Chiefs were really good and they ultimately ended up winning the Super Bowl and he won MVP. So it was actually really cool to see that journey for him as he accomplished those feats for the 2nd time in his career. Then you have the middle guy, Kirk Cousins, who's a top 10 quarterback and really good, but he's not quite at the level of Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and those top guys. But he is good. Kirk is a true pro and has had a ton of success in the NFL, but just hasn't won much in the postseason. He also lives a pretty normalish life, at least compared to the Mahomeses of the league. Minnesota ends up being really good, but ultimately loses in the wild card to the Giants. What I think was really cool though is that they had the Colts game documented, which, if you remember, was the biggest comeback in NFL history. Then you have a guy like Marcus Mariota, who had just been a backup for the Raiders and was getting another shot to start on a not very good Falcons team. Plus, Atlanta had just drafted a quarterback, Desmond Ridder, so you knew that he maybe wasn't going to be the starter for too long, and he wasn't. It gets to that point where he's benched for Ridder and ends up taking a step away from the team. And now he's simply just a backup again in Philadelphia. There was a pretty big contrast between the 3 guys they had on the show, and honestly, I think that's what made it so good. It's easy to see why Patrick Mahomes would be okay being followed by cameras and being on a show like that. He's used to the spotlight at this point. He's the biggest name in football and is literally pro athlete's kid, so it's really not too crazy of a thing for him probably. It only gives the audience a much bigger appreciation for him and who he is as a person. Then you have Kirk Cousins, who I do think got a lot of respect for how he is. I think now there's a more positive perception of him, and you really get to see just how much work he puts in day in and out. But it's also easy to see why a player wouldn't want to be on it. It was just hard to watch some of the Marcus Mariota parts. It was pretty clear that he was the player that was about to be flushed out of being a starter again, and was really just fighting for his career. It was hard to see, and I'm sure it was even harder for him to deal with the cameras everywhere too. There are so many pros to being a part of this show and having fans able to rally behind you and get excited, but there are also a lot of downsides too, and that's why a ton of quarterbacks have said no to the opportunity. So far, we already know that Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, and Sam Howell all said no to be featured on season 2 of the show. They all don't seem to want to be a part of it, and it's hard to blame them. It seems like a big distraction, and especially at the quarterback position where there needs to be so much focus, it has to make things a lot harder. They've already renewed quarterback for season 2, and I'm sure they're gonna get together a great cast for next season as well, but it makes sense why some people wouldn't want to be on it, the same way certain teams don't want to be on Hard Knocks. The show Hard Knocks is on HBO and first started back in 2001, so it's been going on for a really long time. For a while though, a team had to accept the invitation to be on it. That was until 2013, when HBO could essentially begin forcing a team to be on it if no other team volunteered. But there were some stipulations to that. The only teams that are eligible to even be on the show have to follow 3 rules. They can't have appeared on it in the past 10 years, they can't have a first-year head coach, and they couldn't have reached the playoffs in at least the last 2 seasons. Hard Knocks did also start doing in-season Hard Knocks back in 2021 as well. I don't really remember hearing a ton about the in-season one, which is probably just because of it being during the season, so there are a lot of other things going on. Last year was the Cardinals in-season, and it was talked about here and there, but it definitely wasn't as big as the off-season one. Last year's off-season team was the Lions, and like always, it created this buzz around the team. Everyone gets to see the ins and outs of a team, and it makes it super easy to fall in love with them. I feel like Dan Campbell is a perfect example of that too. Getting to see him coach was so cool, and it got a ton of random NFL fans rooting for Detroit out of nowhere. It also gets fans interested in some random player that's just competing for a roster spot and maybe never actually plays on Sunday. And that's what the show is all about. It can bring a team's fandom up, and it gets people excited and usually hypes up the team way too much. But I think it goes without saying that it's a massive distraction to suddenly have cameras all over the place. It can take away from the actual preseason experience, and that's why some teams don't like it. There were actually only 4 teams that were eligible for Hard Knocks this year: the Saints, Commanders, Bears, and the Jets. None of them wanted to do it, so someone was going to get forced to, and it ended up being the Jets. Aaron Rodgers has made it pretty clear that he doesn't want to be on it, and it's kind of hard to blame him. It's a big distraction, and it's going to be harder on the Jets or Commanders more than anyone. Washington is going through an owner change and having a new starting quarterback, and the Jets have a new quarterback and are trying to put in a brand new system. Aaron Rodgers just got to New York and is trying to gel and mesh with his new teammates, and Nathaniel Hackett is the new offensive coordinator, and he's trying to implement a new system. It's understandable that you probably wouldn't want cameras following you around all the time, seeing everything you do when you're going through a big change like that. That's really it. There are so many logical reasons why teams just don't want to be on it. It can cause extra drama with these storylines of positional battles that might not even matter at all. Plus, everyone has to worry a little bit more about what they're saying or doing because they're on camera all the time. You also don't want any team's secrets or schemes getting out, and a chance at privacy usually goes out the window with these shows. I really enjoy being able to sit down and watch these shows because it gives me and a ton of other fans out there crazy insight about what goes on behind the scenes that we wouldn't see otherwise. But honestly, if I were in the same spot, I wouldn't really want cameras all over me all the time either. I know that's ironic since we record YouTube videos for a living, but really, we get to choose when we record. The guys on the field don't. There's already enough media and drama in NFL locker rooms, and having a camera crew and a major show going on probably doesn't help any of that. These shows, I think as a fan, are extremely cool, but it makes complete sense that NFL teams and players don't want the NFL spotlight on them all the time. Of course, as a fan, I'm going to continue watching these shows. Quarterback was fantastic, and the Lions offseason Hard Knocks one was also really, really good and made me love that team more than I ever expected to love the Detroit Lions. But let us know down in the comment section below what you guys think about the situation. Do you guys think that it's okay for these people to say no and it makes sense for them to say no? Or do you just want to see these people say yes and get more media coverage of them that you wouldn't get otherwise? Let us know down below. Thank you again for making it all the way to the end of the video, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.